Hello and welcome to El Partido, yet another Spanish football podcast, but as always, with a little nostalgic twist. I'm your host, Nick Bell, and unfortunately, we have no Paul tonight. There has been a massive power cut in Manchester, which means he can't obviously log on to the internet and do all those modern things you do with electricity. But I'm delighted to say we've managed to tag in another Paul to replace him for this evening. I'm joined by Paul Reidy, a Madrid-based journalist, sports commentator and writer, and huge Rayo Vallecano fan as well. I'm delighted to be joined by Paul. Good evening.
Good evening, Nick. Cheers for the invitation. And yeah, it's a shame that Paul can't be on board, but yeah, we'll make a fist of it, the two of us.
Yeah, why not? I'm sure we can punch through. And I've been really excited to talk to you, Paul, as well, because I know that you've been a follower of the podcast for a while. We've had a few interactions on social media and things like that. And your story is one that has always fascinated me, because there's a lot of people associated with Spanish football that live in Spain and go to games. Some notably follow massive clubs. Rayo Vallecano always strikes me as a fascinating club in itself, but then to learn, someone has the passion about it that you do is a unique thing. So I suppose first I want to ask you a bit about your story. How do you end up firstly in Madrid, doing the job that you do, but then how do you end up becoming a Rayo Vallecano fan?
The two things are kind of interconnected, Nick, to be honest. My background before I sort of fell into the world of sport was the music industry. I lived in London for 15 years and I worked in Polygram, Mercury Records, then Universal. And in a trip to Madrid back in 1993, God, I'm showing my age now, Christ. I met a girl who happened to be my wife. It's just, I happened to walk into a bar on a particular night and, met this person, and, fast forward 30 years, we're married with 2 kids. And I remember, again, we're talking about the mid-90s when there was no real internet and there was no real projection of Spanish football. Everybody, of course, knew about Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, your Valencias, your Sevillas, your Barças. And I remember World Soccer Magazine, which was kind of then the Bible for like international football over and above the likes of Shoot, Goal, 442, the traditional kind of UK-based monthlies. I remember seeing this name, Rayo Vallecano, which at the time I thought was Rayo Vallecano. That's, obviously didn't speak Spanish at the time. So eventually, sort of fast forward a few years, my now wife, girlfriend at the time, moved to London, worked there for 4 years, endured London rather than enjoyed London. So there was always a kind of a feeling that this is not good. If this is to go on to the next level, it's not going to happen in London. It's going to happen somewhere else. So obviously Madrid was the logical destination, given that Universal had an international office based here. So I started knocking on the right doors at the right time and saying, listen, I'm interested in moving, and it would be good to take somebody with skills from the UK and take it over to an international market. And eventually they were happy with that. They were happy with the proposal. And at that time I'd started doing Spanish classes, typical night classes in I think it was in a college in Balham in South London. And
I'll be with the tapes, won't it? It like it was in the language schools used to be on
the lingua phones. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but what I did find is that anytime I'd come over for Easter or for like a long weekend, you'd pick up way more Spanish than you would in a kind of in a studying environment in a class where you're one of 20. A weekend would give you so much more for vocabulary principally, and just the kind of like the idea of the sound and the whole sort of like how it is to be immersed in, going out with her friends and being the guy trying to keep in touch with the language. And obviously they'd feel sorry for you after a while, and they speak to you in like very slow Spanish, or they speak to you in English. So eventually I moved to Universal, and I'm kind of like flitting in and out of the story. So back in the first time when we moved over, a friend of mine who lived here at the time I was like, we're talking about teams in Madrid, and he goes, yeah, but there's this team called Rayo Vallecano. They're like, they wear the white jersey with the red diagonal stripe. They've got a crazy owner. This was like Jose Luis Ruiz Mateas at the time, who was the owner prior to the current president, Raul Martin Presa. And they just sounded like really colorful. He said they're like a yo-yo team. They're never good enough to stay in the top flight, but they're kind of nearly too good for the second flight. This is, late 80s, early 90s, where Rayo were just literally going up for a season, dropping down, back up again.
Yeah.
And
West
then
Bromming.
Yeah, he mentioned Palace, but Palace back in the day when Palace were that kind of yo-yo club. And then before we were due to come back to London after the football tour, I remember being in a Corte Inglés, and this was May. It was like the end of the season. I remember seeing the Rayo jersey on sale at the time, and I was like, "Oh, there's." As I can see yourself, I do like a football shirt, and I have probably way too many football jerseys a man of my age should have, and still continue to acquire, and I have a drawer over there that is actually bursting to the seams. So I bought the Rayo jersey. Me and two of the guys from the team, we missed our flight back to London, and I was like, oh, and we were told at the airport, it's like, we can get you on a flight at like 7 a.m, but you're stuck. That's it. That's the last flight to London has gone. So we're like, okay, well, I've got no clean clothes, but I'll put on the jersey I bought and wear that tonight. We'll just hang out in Madrid all night because, bars are open quite late, and Madrid is not a 24-hour city, but you can knock around to like 4 or 5 a.m. in certain parts of Madrid. So I put on the Rayo jersey. We went back into town, went for a few drinks, and we walk into bars. And this is, you got to remember, this is the mid 90s where there's no internet, and there's certainly not an influx of ground hoppers or that kind of mass football tourism that you get everywhere now. I mean, it's just a reality, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I love traveling to watch football games. I think it's a really enriching experience. But we'd walk into bars, and there would be people like literally coming up to me in Spanish that I didn't really understand, and you could tell they were making a fuss about the jersey. It's like, you're wearing a Rayo jersey. What's this about? And they were buying us drinks and saying, food for the guys with the Rayo jersey. And I was like, this jersey's got something special,
Magic powers.
So then fast forward, and I think the next time I came back again, it coincided. Rayo used to play a lot of their games at midday on a Sunday. So I went down to a Rayo game and rocked up, paid my 2,000 pesetas, went into the game. And I just remember, again, like I say, mid-90s, where there wasn't that big influx of foreign fans coming to see, certainly not Rayo games. There was a kind of novelty value of this foreign guy who's kind of stumbled upon our club, and the sense of pride that they had that I've made the effort to go down and see their team was incredible. I mean, like I said, the language was a barrier at the time because I didn't understand Spanish, but I could tell, you could feel warmth, you can feel human warmth. And it was really kind of like, whoa, this is something going on here, really, like a nice energy, a real positivity. So anytime I'd come back again in the forthcoming years, I'd always make sure that it coincided with a Rayo game. And then I just sort of, started watching Rayo as much as I could, following them from a distance. Occasionally they'd come up on Sky Sports and the Revista de la Liga when Sky had the rights for Spanish football. And have I answered the question?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's good to talk about there is that sort of, and what seems to happen a lot with certainly people from abroad who go to Spain, it's instant connections, isn't it? And it doesn't matter where you are in Spain or the success of the clubs around it. If, like for myself with Malaga, just circumstance put me in that city. It's a one club city, and you go and watch that. I've got friends across Spain who, there's I also host another podcast called El Pozo, which is all about Primera Ref. There's a chap who's moved to Vigo, and he decided to go and watch a Pontevedra game as well. But now, like your story, he's been completely embraced by, the fans at El Pasaron, and goes to every game. He goes home and away as well, which is no mean feat in the third tier now, because there are some huge distances to cover. But again, it is like a bit of an instant love match, isn't it? And that certainly sounds like what's happened with yourself and Rayo.
I think going to the likes, I don't know, you go to Valencia now. I mean, there are so many non-Spanish fans who've over time have kind of come to move and live in the likes of Valencia or La Coruña or Bilbao or wherever it will be, and latched onto the team. So I don't think at those big clubs you get the same react. I mean, even Rayo now, you go to a Rayo game and you hear so many foreign accents, whether it be English, American, Germans, Norwegian, Scandinavians love coming to Rayo games. So you may not get that same kind of warmth, but you need to go. If you go to like Unionistas, a club who I'm very fond of in Salamanca, or Pontevedra, Primera F is definitely the destination where you're going to get that level of warmth that I felt 30 years ago, 40 years ago. 30. Maths is not much.
Well, the last one I was at was Depo Guadalajara. I was at Torremolinos game recently as well, but I kind of went more incognito. But at Depor, it was, first of all, it's the same sort of questions. Why are you here? And two, welcome. We want to show you how great this place is, and that is certainly the place where you do get that in Spain, at that kind of level of football. And Salamanca is exactly the same, and so many others as well. Baracaldo, for example, up in the Basque Country, it is fascinating because people are curious. I work with a chap who's from Elda, and I told him I went to watch Malaga away at Eldense a couple of seasons ago, and he said, "You went to Elda?" I went, well, "I've been to Elda. I've been to Yekla." He was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you've done this. What are you?" He was kind of questioning my sanity a little bit, but it is that passion that you get for it. It's like you're saying, to explore new places that are off the beaten track is a big bonus.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, I love traveling to see football wherever it is in the world. And anytime we go away for a weekend or whatever, always kind of who's at home. And now the kids are an age too where I can take them along and they into the club shop, spending crazy money on shirts and things like that. But it's for me it's an eye opener, because you see new ways of fandom, you see different styles of football, you see different stadiums, and it's an enriching experience. And I think that as a football fan, to travel is also good too, because it does make it takes off the blinkers, and you're exposed to different cultures and different styles of fandom and things like that. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we were talking just before we came on, sort of about obviously your media work and the work you've done after Universal, going into the ROS, IS, and your sports commentary recently as well, which I'm very envious of. I'm sure you could understand, Paul. I'm sure everyone who listens to this podcast would love to be able to commentate on Spanish football. To be able to do that, as well as as someone who's been in Spain for so long, there is a familiarity to it, isn't there? And the fact that you can bring that alive to an audience which is ever growing as well, it's a very unique skill, which I would say actually only a portion of people can actually do. Is it as enjoyable as it sounds, as I suppose, is the question I'm asking.
It is, and sometimes you mentioned earlier on, Nick, when you're talking about traveling. I mean, I've been fortunate over the years, and I'm talking about maybe in the last 7 or 8 years, to have covered a lot of Copa del Rey games. And after the third round, the broadcast, the people who have the rights, they want us to go to the stadium in question. So you mentioned El Pasaron, and I was there for the Pontevedra Getafe game. Was it last year, the year before last, where Pontevedra had 81% of possession, still managed to lose 1-0. Borderlast. Exactly. Yeah. So and I've been to the likes of Huesca, and it just means that you can talk about the walk to the ground. I mean, there's certain grounds I've been to Ceuta's ground, which obviously they're in their first season in Segunda for almost half a decade. I've been to La Rosaleda. I've been to a lot of grounds, and I'm very fortunate. And I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging by being to grounds, but just having those kind of experiences where you've been to the places, the environment, the culture. Because that's the thing about Spain that I think I think there's a misconception from a lot of people outside of Spain who haven't spent a lot of time here, that it's just one long beach. I mean, even to the point where I told ex-colleagues of Universal when I was moving to Spain that I'm going to Madrid and I'll be working in Universal, and they said, "What, you're going to spend lunchtime at the beach?" And there's this concept, it's like just Spain is just an extended beach. There's just beach everywhere. It's like, well, no, Madrid is landlocked. It's like 400 kilometers from the closest beach. So I think, and also when you come to Spain as somebody who has traveled around Spain, how things that happen in Almeria have nothing to do with what happens in La Coruña, and things that happen in the likes of Huesca and Aragon have nothing to do with what happened in Huelva. It's such It's a country really full of contrasts in terms of language, regional culture, identity, history, the whole thing. And I think if you travel around and kind of experience those things, again, I go back to travel again. Travel with an open mind is so important to an individual as a person, but B, in a professional capacity. It enriches you in terms of your ability to offer layers of kind of experience when you're commentating, not just about what happens on the field of play, but also say in this region of Spain, they like this kind of food, and try and commentary is commentary at the end of the day. There's 22 guys on the field of play playing football, and you have to offer your kind of guidance of what's happening. But at the same time, I think if you're talking about Cadiz, you have to talk about the food in Cadiz and how Cadiz is this unique place in Spain. And the same in La Coruña, where you have to have the pulpa feira and offer a little bit more than just a kind of a kind of A, B, and C of this is happening on the field of play. And I try and do a little bit of that. I mean, it's like everything in life, everything's a learning process, and as you commentate and as you start to grow as a commentator, you become your own best and worst critic, and when you have done a good job, or if you make a mistake, you have to learn from that mistake and make sure that you don't make the mistake again, and put things in place to improve yourself. So for me, it's a never growing, and it's a constant evolution, and it's a constant growing process, and something that I've been fortunate to find myself in. I'm extremely grateful, and I never take it for granted, and always try and kind of just be humble and just be honest, and sometimes when we're doing high promotion, we're on our own. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get players wrong. You're going to make a wrong goal, and it's just try not to let it lose your rhythm, because it's all about getting the rhythm and getting the kind of groove. As you know, you've done commentary in the past yourself, Nick.
Yeah. I'm taking all these notes now, thinking this is exactly what I need for my audition tape going forward.
But
so I think
it's great, and to be able to do it in Spanish football, which is the second division, is sometimes the football, it can be very cagey, it can be very sterile possession, a lot of kind of retaining the ball for the sake of it, I think sometimes. And then you get teams like Castellon who go for teams, and who are like somebody like Las Palmas, for example. Las Palmas would tend to sort of be a kind of I find a very rigid team in terms of they're not dynamic. I don't find them as a team who are exciting. Where you get Castellon, you get Racing, you get Deportivo, you get Almeria. They're teams who are exciting teams.
Play with an edge, don't they?
Yeah, and they have some players who could quite easily play in the top flight. Arribas at Almeria, Inigo at Racing, Andres Martin at Racing. They're players that looks like they will be playing in the top flight next season. And it's fascinating league, because stadiums are generally full. It's incredible to see, on a Monday night at Huesca, Cadiz with 350 fans. I mean, that's something that didn't happen in Spanish football 15 years ago. This is great to see. And you just think maybe La Liga could be a little bit better in publicizing the kickoff times, maybe couple of weeks earlier, so people can plan accordingly. Because I think I'm still waiting for somebody who can tell me the rationale by leaving it, last minute.
I don't think there is one, to be fair. I think they've got a dartboard in the office at La Liga, and sometimes they'll just chuck at a random time, maybe, and stuff like that. But there's no rhyme or reason to it, is there? But it's something that could definitely be
improved,
massively. To take us back to Rayo Vallecano as well, because when I think of Rayo Vallecano, I do think of Paul Reidy. Like I say, I've followed you on social media for a while. I know you've got this real integration with the club as well, and as we mentioned before, Rayo Vallecano is such a fascinating club. It's not just a club that represents, as you've mentioned, 11 players on a pitch, or even just like a fan base. It represents more than that. It represents a neighbourhood. It represents a political identity. It represents, increasingly, rightly or wrongly in some cases, sort of like how football was, whereas the modern game seems to be, passing them by. However, ultimately, they're a club which, massively out competes and out punches where they should be. We're recording straight after a victory that they've just had over in Turkey, 3-1 away. The side I lose my brain right now, but again,
Samsung
we,
Sport,
we
yeah.
Samsung Sport, and we were talking about that before we came on and saying, like, if you was to say, go back 10 years ago, would Rayo be competing in the knockout stage of a European trophy? You probably wouldn't have said yes, would you?
No, I think that one of the things that is key to mention from the outside, Nick, when we're talking about Rayo Vallecano, there's two Rayo Vallecanos. There's the
Mm,
institution, the football club. There's the way that the governing people behind the club, and obviously the sporting side of things. And then you've got Rayo Vallecano, which is like which I'd call the fans, the neighborhood, the kind of the social side of things.
mm,
And at the moment, they're two different heads, and they're not meeting in the same place. They come from the same area, but they've taken diverse paths. Um,
yeah.
and again, I do not want this whole podcast to be 45 minutes of angry fan ranting about owner, because that's we've all seen that film before.
Mm,
But I do believe you're a Blackpool fan. We talked about Blackpool earlier on, and obviously
hmm
it's been well documented about how the Oyston family ran the club and had their differences with the supporters and some of the episodes that happened around the club.
yeah.
Some of the stuff that happened at Rio, I mean, again, this is where I really don't sound like I'm ranting the whole time. It defies rationale as to why this is still happening. Why
Mm,
that? How come, despite everything being shambolic? I mean, quite clearly, Mr. Presa has an agenda, and that is to make as much money as he can out of the football club. He's seen a great opportunity to be somebody as a person with a media profile, rubbing shoulders with the likes of Florentino Perez and Joan Laporta, and sort of part of the he's a president of a club. He is a figurehead.
yeah.
But at the same time, there's so much that has been shambolic in his management of the club. And again, like I said, I don't want to make this sound like angry fan, unhappy with president, but it's been well documented to the point where you've got the Athletic have covered his miscomings. You've got the Guardian have documented it, where the club himself, the players themselves, make through the AFE, which is the Players Association, come out with a statement saying basically this can't go on. This is unsustainable. The way you are managing things, we can't go on like this. And this is a prelude to the whole episode recently with the state of the pitch pre the Oviedo game.
Mm,
And this for me is a huge stain on the image of La Liga internationally.
mm,
That all of a sudden a game has to be played. A home game against Atletico Madrid has to be moved. The game against Oviedo is cancelled at literally 4 hours before kickoff, with the Oviedo fans here, the Oviedo team here, just because somebody decided, oh, let's put a pitch down in the middle of winter without any kind of due process. And anybody who understands gardening will tell you you don't put things down in winter, and in what has been the wettest winter in Spain for 25 years. So it's just a shambles. I mean, it is a shambles, and a shambles is actually being polite about
mm,
the way since he took over in 2011 for the paltry fee of €961 to take the roughly 97% share of the shares of the football club. At the time, he did take on board the debt, which was anywhere between 40 and 50 million euro. And despite everything that's been well documented over the years, all the various episodes with the women's team, with the kids team, the underage team, with the B team, with the training ground, his latest kind of flight of fancy, which is to take Rayo away from Vallecas. As we said, the football team, the 11 players on the pitch are in the last 16 of the Conference League, have just beaten Samsung Sport away from home. You would imagine would progress to the next stage, where they play either AEK Athens or Celje, and then there's in my bracket that I've done, we all do our brackets. They beat Crystal Palace in the final, and they're the champions of the Conference League, and that is bewildering. When I don't know if you've had the pleasure of going to a game at Rayo, Nick, or been to the stadium.
No, it's high up on my list of places to go.
I mean, people love going to, and because it is a flashback in time. It's like stepping into, a stadium in England in the 1970s. Albeit it's all seating and things like that. But in terms of like the infrastructure and the feeling and the vibe is old school. And a lot of people love that in the modern game where everything is just so kind of homogenized and so kind of similar. And the Allianz Arena looks like the same as the Emirates, which kind of looks a bit like San Mamés inside,
It's all copy and paste, isn't it? Sometimes,
a little bit. Then you go to Rayo, and it's different. It's like a 3-sided ground. You have one end uncovered, and it's where the voice of energy and the kind of the passion that emanates from the Bucanero stand is there. It is a great experience, but when you take that away as a one-off experience, it's unhygienic. The toilets are unfit for purpose. You wouldn't want to bring your kids there and they need to go to the toilet because there's no. It's just not salubrious in terms of hygiene and things like that, Nick. So it's.
I think that's a big thing about Rayo Vallecano as an entity, isn't it? It's kind of an oxymoron of itself, isn't it? Because you would look on paper at all those things you've just mentioned there. We can also add on the you can't buy tickets over the internet thing, which is something that's been around for nigh on 25 years now, or maybe just less than that. You still have to queue around the block to go and get your tickets, or when the season tickets released, it's a 10-hour wait type thing. It's stuff like that. But even with those facets, whether it's the manager, it turns out to be absolutely world class. Whether it's the current manager or the previous manager or the previous manager before that, there's superstars that on the world stage that have played for the likes of Real Madrid or Chelsea's or Manchester United who want to go and play for Rayo Vallecano, and they make themselves legends and they make themselves heroes at that club. There's a pull factor, isn't it? And then, as you've already mentioned, the fan base itself, in spite of everything that's happening now, is one of the most ferocious and one of the most incredible atmospheres you'll find in Spanish football. So it's often hard to really believe that those two things can live side by side, but they do, and they sort of make it work, don't they?
It's funny. I mean, who was having the conversation? Again, another conversation recently. We were talking about it was the Rayo jersey they wore tonight in Samsonspor, where they've kind of swapped. Well, Presa has decided that instead of the straight diagonal stripe, we've got this lightning bolt now.
Yeah.
This was kind of introduced for the anniversary jersey. It was centenary jersey in 2024, 2 years ago, which was kind of like. Again, this is obviously doesn't look very good visually. three kind of lightning bolts representing the number 100.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. It was fucking horrible. Can I swear on the podcast? Right?
Of course you can. Swear away.
And since then, the fans have said we want the diagonal stripe back. We want the plain stripe back. Moral Martin Presa now knows that the fans want the diagonal stripe. So what is he going to do every year? Lightning bolts. So we've got the lightning bolt, and we will be stuck with the lightning bolt. I mean, he does things to rile the supporters. If he thinks the fans want X, he'll give you Y. The fans obviously want, he's got a rap list that's, I could be here all night. I literally could be here all night ranting on and kind of going on about some of the things. But, quite clearly the profile of the supporters in Vallecas is a working class neighborhood. The fans are very much left leaning. I'm not sort of revealing anything that people don't know here. That's the situation. Fine, you're the president of the club and you can invite who you want into your VIP section. You do not invite the head of Vox, which is the far right political party, and publicize it and post pictures of the Vox leader being presented with a jersey. It's his club; he can do what he wants. Fine, but you just don't broadcast it because you know that is not going to endear you to any Rayo fan.
No, I mean, it's like he lives in notoriety, isn't it? It's like we mentioned before, he's not somebody who necessarily has, the personality or dare I say profile of somebody, like a Florentino Perez or a Laporta, for example. But he kind of wants to put himself on that egotistical level by doing things that are controversial. And it's an odd way to behave because you can get some really good owners, and I know that as well. We spoke about Derry City before we came on here, and I know the owner of Derry City is very not hands off, but he's very much, I am a custodian of this club. Blackpool's current owner is also, of that mindset. I'm the custodian, I'm not the owner. And you just don't get that kind of feel from Presa, do you? You feel like he is just, this is mine, this is my toy, I'll play with it however I want. And if you don't like it, well, tough luck, go away.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're an owner of a football club, you have a duty to not necessarily like the supporters, because you don't need to like them. I mean, but you need to sort of appreciate that they are the guys who come in, week out, they make the noise, they generate the atmosphere. They're the ones who will be there 10, 15, 20 years down the line when he has moved on or when other people move on. Players and managers will come and go. The fans will always be there. But you need, I mean, I think it's even as a good, as a kind of an element of management of kind of, human management, engage with them, get them on your side. Things could be so much better. Can you imagine the experience now if we were all kind of swimming in the same direction, going for this Conference League trophy, which would be absolutely incredible. I mean, it would be honestly one of the biggest miracles in football, where find the Rayo players are well paid, and it's a Spanish team who are reasonably consolidated in the top flight in Spain. But despite everything going on behind the scenes, if the club and the fans were together, and because there's this schism that's just, it's irreparable at this point in time, Nick. To be honest, it's so deep, and the wounds are so deep, and so much has been done by either side. Neither side are prepared to kind of come to the table. And I remember a wonderful experience, or a wonderful personal experience, back in the last time Rayo were relegated, 6 years ago. They decided to raise the price of the season tickets. And normally when a club gets relegated, they're like, oh shit, we need to keep the fans on board. Let's drop the prices a bit. So they raised the season ticket prices, and also they took out Rayo Femenina, which was always included in the season ticket. Because when I moved in 2003, first thing I did was buy the season ticket, as Rayo fell from the top flight to the second flight to 4 seasons in Segunda B, the old, which is third tier of Spanish football. So I had my season ticket from then through to 2019, and this was the time when the fans, and that's the thing about the game, and I talk about Spanish football, I talk about English football, that from the years 2000s, we just went as fans, meekly to the game. We went and watched our football, and we went home. We didn't ask questions about who actually owns the club, and what happens when this money that comes into the club from TV, how does it get spent, or how does it? There was no real kind of questioning about the governance side of things. And then I think there was a couple of episodes like Exeter City, I think Wickham, a couple of clubs in England went close to the wire, and the whole kind of supporters trusts came along, and the football fans started to get a little bit more engaged. And so this was happening in the UK. I think Portsmouth were another club who, the supporters trust kind of took over and things like that. And in Spain, you've had a lot of colorful characters as presidents, obviously Jesus Gil and the like, back in the day. And the same with Rayo. The Rayo fans we just go to the game, applaud the team, support the team, and go home. And then there was a point when, during the Ruiz Mateus, his final years, when the players were not getting paid, where the people, behind the scenes, washing the kits, driving the buses, weren't getting paid. And you're like, well, hang on, why is nobody getting paid here? Where the money that's coming into the football club, where's it going? And Ruiz Mateus he had a whole consortium of businesses, and he was like channeling money from the football club in to kind of sustain his businesses. So the Rayo fans started to ask questions like, what's going on here? We need answers. And this kind of coincided with Ruiz Mateus exiting the club, and the club going into, like I said, they racked up debts of between 40 and 50 million euro. And football fans just sort of asking questions about what's going on with the football club, and I'm trying to think. Go back to the thread. What were we originally talking about there?
We love a tangent on this podcast, Paul. So don't worry about it. We drive often, to be honest. But yeah,
My tangent is so long that I forgot the original thread.
but you know what? It raises a fascinating point actually, because I was talking about Intercity,
Yeah.
football club down in Alicante the other week, and how they're trying to revolutionise
Mm.
modern football with a crazy ownership plan. And I
Buying
think,
a lot of gold, I can see at the moment.
yeah, the first team in the world to ever have their own gold treasury, which
Yeah.
probably not the right time to do it at the minute with the way the world is. But and I think probably the thing with Rayo Vallecano is instability seems to follow them round, and whether that was the decision to go from being a socio club into obviously when clubs in the top two divisions were essentially forced to become SAD clubs or SAD clubs. I do know the Spanish words, but I don't want to embarrass myself. I think it's socio associations
Sociedad
something.
Anónimo Deportivo. Yeah. So,
That's the one. There you go. And and I think it's instances like that where clubs like Rayo, who I think would have thrived. You've mentioned Unionistas de Salamanca, for example. The way they're thriving at the moment as well. The way that Athletic Club maybe can be put into that category as well. It was kind of taken from them, and it made them susceptible to what's happened to them to happen, didn't it? In terms of the fans did lose control ever so slightly, and I think that is something that they're now fighting really hard to get back, aren't they? And I think now that particular SAD element isn't involved anymore, do you see a future where Presa will, I don't want to say give it up, but where the fans could get maybe a lot more involved or a lot more to own it or something like, because it feels like the kind of club where if they did, it would just take the brakes off, it would just take the shackles off, it would really thrive.
I mean, that's the thing. It's sometimes you'll get Rayo fans, and it's kind of like nobody who supports a football club wants to see their club lose or wants to see their club struggle. But it has been said in the past that firstly, what's in it? Why is Raul Martin Presa the president of Rayo Vallecano? That's the first question. Obviously, from a financial point of view, it's very interesting to be the president. The amount of money you get from TV rights and then player sales. Obviously, it becomes somebody in Spanish media. I mean, people know who he is. His brother's on the board of directors, so he's doing well out of Rayo. What needs to change for there to be a kind of a U-turn? The inflow of money to cease, and how does that happen? Rayo dropped to the third tier, where there's no big TV money, there's no big the club basically. I'm not saying goes out of business, but drops down to the third tier again. That would be the only reason I would see why he'd want to sell, is that because financially it's not, because he has very thick skin. I mean, we've talked about the Oystons, we talked about Nick Ashley at Newcastle, who eventually over time kind of wound down the fan protests and week in, week out. This is a guy who sits in the president's box with his counterpart from your Sevillas and your Betises and your Celta Vigos. And he's been taunted and having Presa vete ya chance, which is like Presa get out chance at every game. I don't know if you saw at the weekend against Sevilla, the Rayo fans were saying Junior vete ya, and the Sevilla fans were chanting Presa vete ya. So it's like, because Rayo and Sevilla fans get on quite well, so there was that kind of connection. So that can't be nice as an individual to have 15,000 in the case of Rayo, or 40,000 at the Sanchez Pizjuan, chanting for you to get out. That cannot be nice as a human being, to have that level of bile and that level of anger. Yet, year after year after year, he puts up with it. He tolerates it. I presume he sees it as the price he has to pay but surely, and this is when I come back to the management side of things again. At some point, you kind of say, this could be better. This doesn't need to be bad. This relationship could be different. I mean, nobody enjoys this. Presa doesn't enjoy the negative. Maybe he does. I don't know. It's like, how does the world of the mind of Raul Martin Presa work? I mean, that's the key question.
It'll always be sort of like what is the end goal for Presa in that opinion, and whether it's, like I say, his intention is to move them out of Vallecas, is it maybe a property deal? Who knows? It's all speculation, and we don't obviously want to go too much down that line. But ultimately, if you did look at the other way, and you looked at sort of the way Celta Vigo are at the moment, or Real Betis are at the moment, Villarreal, maybe to a lesser extent, but if you do get that culture around the club right, and you do provide the facilities, if you do get the pitch right, if you do get the stadium right, incentivize the fans, make the players happy, you won't be going to, like I say, deep into a European campaign, sort of like, oh well, this is a one-off. You'd be doing it a lot more regularly, and I think that's a big thing. That if you could harness the power of Rayo, there's a massive club there, and Madrid is a city that's filled with big clubs. Obviously, you've got notably Real Madrid and Atleti. You've also got Getafe, obviously not too far away, Leganés, etc. But Rayo is pretty specifically the third biggest club, or the massive club of the capital, which if you take that into London, for example, you're putting it on a par with a Spurs or a West Ham. I'm probably going to get absolute pelters for this for people to listen to it, but that kind of size club, which our regular European competitors are, cash rich clubs, have international fan bases, it's got potential to do that. And to maybe look at the really good sides of what happens there. If you could, get a fourth stand at Vallecas, for example, or if you could, sort of like replicate what happens at Mestalla to an extent, you'd have a really massive force there, wouldn't you? It's just unlocking it, which would be the big thing. So, I think one of the things I really want to ask you, from your experiences going to Vallecas and watching a game there, whether it's a European night or whether it's a Copa del Rey game or whether it's a Madrid derby, it's electric, isn't it? And it's one of the best places you can go and watch football in Spain.
And do you know, I've just remembered when I went off on that tangent, and I was trying to remember my starting, but I've just remembered. Let me just go back to that very quickly, and then we'll go back to the match day experience, whereby they increased the price of the season tickets. This is it.
That was it.
And so basically, the fans kind of said, "Okay, we're not gonna stand for this." And there was a meeting outside the stadium whereby groups of, there's a thing called the Plataforma ADRV, which is like various kind of supporter groups, they come together and they create this fan group, and they were like, okay, we're going, we've taken all the points on board. We know exactly what your anger is. We're going to meet the club on, say, Tuesday at 6:00. We're going to put these points on the table, and let's see if the club kind of plays ball and we can get some kind of forward direction. So they got into the Ciudad Deportivos where Rayo train, the sporting center. The representatives for the club turn up 90 minutes late. They sit down around the table with the guys and they kind of say, okay, point number one, well, no, we can't do that. Point number two, you're joking. Point number three, that's not a thing. They went through all the points, basically dismissed them out of hand, and said, anything else to discuss? Or the meeting's over. And it's like that you just like, it's like a negotiation is supposed to be, I concede a little bit and you concede a little bit, and we meet somewhere in the middle. And at the moment, there's no desire for Rayo, the club board of directors, Rayo Martin Presa, to try and meet the fans somewhere in the middle. And that was for me. That was the point where I was like, okay, because we talked about fan protests before and boycotts and things like that. There was definitely a groundswell, like, okay, we're going to boycott the club. This is it. We're not going to renew our season tickets. That's it. They're taking things too far.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, as the season came around, some fans were going back. But Bucaneros basically said, listen, if we don't renew, they will take our space and they'll put another. If we don't renew our season tickets, they'll sell them to other fans who will be, just random fans, and that'll be the end of the kind of the animated support or organized support. So that's basically what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a club who just does not want to engage with the fan base. So I'm not answering the question from like 10 minutes ago.
We've gone circle.
Can edit. I'm sure your editing skills, you can make it sound somewhat coherent, Nick. So anyway, so match day. I mean, the match day experience at Vallecas. I remember when I first moved to Madrid. A lot of my friends back in the UK, they were like, I'm going to come over for the weekend, take me to the Bernabeu. And I'm like, all right, I'll take you to the Bernabeu under the condition that you come to see Rayo Celta or Rayo Alaves or Rayo Malaga or Rayo whoever. And they were like, fine, fair enough. Because they didn't know much about Rayo because, let's be honest, Rayo didn't certainly have that kind of international profile. So we do both, and they to a man said that the atmosphere generated by the 12,000 fans at Vallecas was so much better than the 82,000 at the Bernabeu, or the 62 or whatever it was,
Yeah.
the 70 at the Bernabeu. They said it's just a different experience. It's like, I don't know, it's like watching a band in a small, dodgy little club, sort of, like sweaty club, or watching a band on a big, stadium arena. They're different experiences. One's a bit more earthy, it's a bit more intimate. The other one's a bit more cold, it's a bit more polished, it's a bit more, and that's what going to see Rayo is like. It's kind of, it's the neighborhood of Vallecas. It's a working class neighborhood. It's very proud of its of what it is. It doesn't try and pretend anything that it's not. And the match day experience is brilliant. I mean, and it's brilliant because of the fans, Nick, not because of the club, because of the fans. Because the fans make the experience really good. The Buccaneers obviously are the kind of like the main energy, the main kind of the lungs behind the whole thing. They make a tremendous amount of noise, and their noise level. The minute Rayo concede a goal, the noise level goes up. They're I think it's very easy for a fan of the team saying my the hardcore fans or the organized fans are brilliant. And in the case of Buccaneers, they're really, they do a wonderful job in creating an atmosphere. And the match day experience is brilliant. It's excellent, and it's good fun.
Yeah, which I think, like say, everyone, when you go to those kind of stadiums where you do get that atmosphere and you do get the the interaction with the local fan base and things like that, as you say, I suppose football tourism is a massive thing at the moment, which is on everybody's lips, and it's more prevalent. At your Real Madrid, your Barcelona, to a lesser extent your Atletis, it still does touch Vallecas as well. And I think the notoriety that goes around the story of Rayo Vallecano is what draws people to it. But ultimately, as you've mentioned, you get a different feel to that. Yeah. You still get that authenticness, don't you, when you go to a Rayo game? And, I know I certainly really, really am looking forward to getting to Madrid and going to a game there as well, and getting to observe sort of like I really love the idea of a stadium in the barrio still. You know what I mean? Like, so, surrounded by the apartments, surrounded by the flats. It's the same with Mestalla. For my mind, I cannot tell you why on earth Valencia would ever leave Mestalla rather than try to renovate what they've got. I understand there's probably logistical stuff to go with that, but also, why would you? It's a fortress, and it's the same with Vallecas as well. And I think with Rayo, they've got instances in their history as well, haven't they? If we go back to sort of like, I think it was 2000, 2001 when they were last in Europe, they've got European football this season. They like to make history for themselves as well, which I think is quite important. They don't really concern themselves too much with what's going on in the outside world, do they? Real Madrid have won another Champions League. Yeah, so what? We're in Europe this season, or we're reaching a Copa del Rey semi-final, or we're getting promoted out of the Spanish Segunda. The level of pride that they have in their own achievements is you don't really see in a lot of other places in never mind Spanish football, world football.
But that's the thing. It's like so many times, certainly when I moved here, people, you speak to Spaniards and you're into football. It's like, yeah, who do you support? Rayo. Why do you support them? It's like, as if to say, what are you doing with those losers? It's like, and that's the thing about Rayo fans. Rayo fans are quite very much self-aware. They're aware of the limitations of the side, and the objective, if they're in the Premier, is to not fall into the bottom three. They don't aspire to win the Copa del Rey. I mean, if they have a good cup run, it's great and it's really well received. And of course, nobody goes to football to watch their team lose. And then a Conference League comes around. And as I said to you at the offside, we were talking about the final in Leipzig. It's like, I'm never going to see this again. I mean, genuinely, the Rayo will not qualify for Europe again. It's very unlikely. I mean, you look at the history, and if you study statistics, Rayo will be relegated in the next 2, 3, 4 years, and they'll be back to Segunda again, and they'll be back to crowds 7,500. And that's the thing that Presa doesn't seem to understand, is that when Rayo were in Segunda B, there was 5,000 people down there watching the games against Depor B, teams like Vecindario, Pájaros de Jandía, Lanzarote, these teams from the Canary, 5,000 people. And then when Rayo in Segunda, you get between 7,500 to 10,000 fans watching games. So you're not selling out. So the idea of moving to 30,000 arena stadium for a team that potentially could be back in the second division again. It just doesn't make sense, Nick. It just doesn't make
Boggles the
sense.
mind, doesn't it? Yeah,
It just doesn't
it
make sense.
really does.
And architects have come up with plans saying, you can move things around, and you can make a modern stadium in the same area. Of course, it's going to be in the same. It'll be confined with the flats, but that's part of the idiosyncrasy. I can't even say the word in English. What's idiosyncrasy of Rayo? What's the word in English? Idiosyncrasy? No, that's the word in English.
Idiosyncrasies. Yeah. I think
That's part of what makes Rayo what it is. It's like, and you take Rayo out of Vallecas, and it's not the same club anymore. It's not the same club. You stick them in I don't know, in Valderenal, or you stick them in I don't know, Moratalaz or whatever, and it's not the same, and it won't be the same, and people will lose interest and not go. But it's like, you don't need a 30,000 seat stadium. Rayo does not need a 30,000. It needs to modernize what it has. It needs to acknowledge what it has. He needs to kind of forget about that idea of moving to a brand new stadium, because it's going to get pushed back. Nobody's going to want to get on board, and it's not necessary. That's the thing. It's like Rayo will be back in the second division, and again, it's not great for a fan to say that. I certainly don't wish it, but that's just the nature of a club operated on a budget like Rayo's. It's like they will be back at some point in the second division again. I don't think they'll drop as low as Segunda B or Primera Federación, but they will be in the Segunda.
It's like a cycle, isn't it? Like you say, it's football teams are often, unless you are the power mad rich clubs at the top of the tree, it is cyclic, isn't it? In terms of, you'll have some times in the sun, you'll have some times at the bottom, and then you'll just keep going around and things like that. And I think that as you've mentioned, that's what Rayo supporters expect. It's the instances of surprise which really gets the Rayo fan really excited. And I suppose
just to say that we have been so lucky in the last 5 years to have two exceptional managers in Antonio Riola, really good work at Bournemouth, and Inigo Perez, who is just, for a guy who's so young, he's like in his early 30s, speaks with such coherency and such clarity, and he really understands. You can just tell the level of respect the players have for him. I mean, anybody I know who's kind of come in contact with it, they're just saying, this guy's like a real visionary. He really knows his stuff. He's a student of the game, kind of thing. But he'll leave. I mean, he was close to leaving. He had a bust up with Bayou, and after I think it was the Lech Poznan game that we played in the Conference League, he admitted, said, I was close to throwing in the towel. He'll go, and we'll get another manager, and he won't be as good, and he won't be able to get the same out of journeyman footballers, because a lot of the Rayo players, they've come from Ponferradina, they've come from Espanyol, or they've come from these are Rayo don't spend a lot of money on players. They bring in these kind of guys, and hopefully it works together. And unfortunately, under David Cabello, who's the sporting director, and under those two exceptional coaches, things have clicked so well. But we cannot expect this to continue, because it won't. And I think we need to be honest and realistic about it. That it's not sustainable, given the situation of the club and the way the club operates. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, it must have been an absolute again, being a fan of the massive surprises that come when Iriola left, and it was inevitable that someone was going to come in for him. I was surprised, as many people were, that it was Bournemouth. I thought it might have been somewhere slightly different, but ultimately the shock and the expectation for Rayo was, well, like I say, we're going to go back into that circle again. We'll get a subpar manager, and we'll maybe compete, we maybe won't. But to get Inigo Perez and what he's done, to have those two managers back to back in the sustained period of what is success for Rayo is, I'm trying to think of the last time it probably happened. You must be going back like 25, 30 years since that sort of last happened.
The only good thing to come out of Brexit, Nick, has been Inigo Perez, because Iriola wanted him at Bournemouth, and then there was issues with his work visa. He wasn't given clearance to work in the UK, and then he moved to Rayo. I mean, as a result of Brexit. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm
cheers, Nigel.
Good on you, Nigel. Yeah. So yeah, but like I say, I think Rayo fans are they're the most self-aware. They're aware of their limitations, and they're aware that that it's about Vallecas. It's about values. It's about supporting the team through good times and bad times, and we've had way more bad times than good times enjoying these moments of good times. And there's a whole kind of thing at the moment about, could we actually go all the way, and what would that mean? And just imagine, this kind of fantasy of being in Leipzig, playing Crystal Palace or Fiorentina, but just the idea of like 20,000 Rayo fans going there, people that maybe have lost interest in Rayo over the years. I didn't renew my season ticket for 5 years, and I found myself missing out because of Presa on, what it's like before games in Spain. It's the previa. It's like part of the. It's part of the. It's nearly sometimes more fun than the actual football itself. You hook up with people again. You meet people again. A lot of time, it's like people that but you don't know. But it's like, hey Theo, how you doing? And that for me was part of the whole thing. It was like, I'd moved to Madrid, just establishing myself in a new city, and Rayo was a fantastic vehicle for me to get to know people and to kind of have this kind of like thing that was like, every 2 weeks you go down and you meet the same guys again. And I met a lot of my friends are through Rayo, and then I find myself depriving myself of not going to Rayo games because of the boycott, which I did, and there was literally me and like 10 other people boycotting the thing. And now I've got a season ticket again. My 15-year-old was, Dad, you need to get back a season ticket. And I said, I refuse to queue in the middle of August for like 24 hours in a deck chair overnight. I'm not going to do that. And then I managed to get 2 season tickets came through. So we signed up for it. So I've got a season ticket again this season. And it's brilliant to be back again. And the few times that I went down there, occasionally with a season ticket last year, it gave me that little taste of what I'm missing. And it made me realize that, hang on, Presa doesn't give a shit about me as an individual. He doesn't give a shit about my €300. The fact that I haven't bought any Rayo merchandise since I decided to boycott, he doesn't care. And
so you're only spiting yourself, really, in the end, aren't you?
A lot of people said to me, listen, Paul, man, stop being so stubborn. And I was like, no, I've made a stand and I'm going to stick by it. And I had a principle. I don't want to give him my €300 and I don't want to buy any jerseys. I don't want to buy any training tops. And then over time, I was like, why am I doing this? Something I loved, that I looked forward to. I'm because of stubbornness. It's not really getting me anywhere, So, and it's always been said by the platform, and the Buccaneers are always saying our voice is much more powerful inside the ground than it is outside on Twitter, for example.
And I think that's the big thing where Rayo Vallecano could still, regardless of the ownership, whoever's name is above the side of the door, whoever's, like I say, the current custodians, the clubbers will continue to call them. Ultimately, Rayo Vallecano proves that football can still belong to the people. It's not a sanitized corporate product that you can sell. And as much as Presa, would want it that way, maybe, it refused to bend that way. You won't have, the same situations that you see at like Barcelona, for example, or, other clubs like, down in Sevilla or up in, other teams basically where they're focusing more on exploiting, the corporate nature of where football is going. If that's the case, you wouldn't get that.
Valencia's another candidate when you're in that mix, Nick. When you're talking about clubs where there's a lot of dissatisfaction about the management. I mean, obviously Sevilla is well documented. Valencia with obviously the Peter Lim regime is another one where there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of unrest among the fans. But at the end of the day, I mean, in the case of Rayo, he's got the 97% shares. He can. It's his toy, and he can do what he wants with it, and that's the sad reality. I just wish that he was a little bit more engaging and a little bit more kind of just have the realization that's like, this could be so much better if we're in it together. I mean, that sounds like a bloody political party slogan or something. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, let's enjoy it all together. We're having a great run. We're having, it's our day in the sun. Let's do it together. Let's enjoy it together. Let's not fight all the time, and let's look for common ground. And I didn't see that common ground when the Plataforma went to meet with the club, and the club just literally dismissed them out of the door. And I'm just thought that's not a club that I can feel. It was upsetting to see that was the disdain that the club felt for the fans who are, for me, the reason that I love Rayo Vallecano is not the football, and the football can be brilliant. The matchday experience is, I mean, it's the novelty of the whole kind of old school thing is worn off now. But it's the fans. It's the fans, 100%. I mean, That's why I discovered Rayo originally. You know, the interaction of going to the game, of wearing the jersey for the first time, the reaction from other people. It's all about, because it's, you know, you, like I say, you know that you're not going to win titles. You know, if you survive, it's great. If you get into Europe, it's a bonus. It's a huge bonus. But it's all about survival, and it's also about, there's a kind of thing of representation to what Rayo represents. You see a person wearing a Rayo jersey, and you don't see them that often, but there's straight away a connection. He's one of mine. He's like, he's one of the, he's a good one.
It's a good community, isn't it? And I think that's
that's the thing about it. It's that community spirit, that feeling of that. You know, there's not so many of us, but we're strong together, and we're proud together, and then there's that kind of like pride in humility, I guess, as a football club. You know.
Yeah, which I think if you could bottle up and sell that, it'd be absolutely, brilliant, because it's a money can't buy element to a football club nowadays, isn't it? And you don't see it that often. And I think, praising the fans and the atmosphere they make, and having their voices heard the way that they are, is a really, great way to sort of like end this episode, Paul, because I cannot, praise them enough myself. And again, reiterate, I can't wait to experience it myself. And I'm very envious that, and I've got everything crossed for you when you do get to Leipzig and you are in that European final and you are bringing that trophy home, that it'll all come nice full circle for you. But I must say, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Paul.
Cheers, Nick. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a joy to be on. And again, we could be here at midnight, and I could be rambling on, banging on about Presa, and I've got my hit list of the Presa crimes over here. We can do a follow up from Leipzig, and we can do the Presa crimes or something like that. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I again would love to welcome you back on, Paul. Hopefully, when you have lifted European trophies as well. But again, I know that Rayo Vallecano is just one part of your story as well, fundamentally, with Spanish football too. And there's probably a lot more of the pages that we could dive into as well. So if you are ever free to come back on, you are more than welcome as well. Is there anything that, in terms of yourself, you'd like to plug, or any places where we could keep an eye out for you? Or
if you do listen to La Liga High Promotion in the UK or around the world, you'll hear my dulcet tones. Dulcet?
I'll say the dulcet. I'm
not sure about. So yeah, no, tune into La Liga High Promotion. Obviously, keep following Spanish football, and again, credit to yourself, Nick, and the team there for doing fantastic work. It's great to see these kind of like this passion emerging for the game, and it can only be good for Spanish football, because that's what we love. It's what keeps us going, and it's great to see coverage that's not just Madrid and Barca focused, because that for me is one of the, people say to me, he's like, who do you support? I said, Rayo. They're like, yeah, Madrid and Barca. Who do you support? I was like, well, Rayo. And they're like, yeah, but come on. I'm like, I don't support other teams. And to have the spotlight on Spanish football, that is not just Madrid, Barca focus. And I understand that is a business a lot of time, and they're the things that sell. But there's so many other like really interesting stories in Spanish football that are away from Real Madrid and Barcelona, and it's good to see them showcasing. Every credit to you and your team for doing that, Nick. So yeah, keep it up.
Oh no, perfect. Thank you. I'll definitely have to get you a beer when I'm in Madrid next. But, wonderful testimonial. But yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. We can't wait to have you on again. Thank you to you guys for listening at home. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about all these other stories, as Paul has mentioned. If you do want to know more, go to Patreon. You can listen to this early and ad-free, access bonus episodes, El Partido stories, extra additional content, so you can head there as well, or just give us a follow on social media. We try and give ourselves some nice little posts out there, some storytelling. It's always quite fun. But for now, I'll say thank you very much for joining us once again. We'll catch you next time. Hasta luego.
Cheers, guys.